But we have some breaking news right now. For the first time in the history of the United States of America, a state is refusing to put a presidential candidate on the ballot for the presidency in 2024. That would be the state of Colorado, whose court has just ruled seconds ago that Donald Trump is disqualified under a clause in the 14th Amendment. The Colorado court saying that because they believe he took part in an insurrection, which would be January 6th, he is not allowed to be on the ballot. This is pretty amazing. Let's go to the AP story here. It cites Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Again, never been used. Nobody's ever tried this before. I mean, that's messed up. Right? That never tried it. A majority of the court holds that Trump is disqualified from holding the office of president under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. The court is writing in its 4-3 decision. I should point out that the justices on that court, the Colorado Supreme Court, were all appointed by Democrat governors. So you understand how loaded this is politically and how dangerous this is that they're doing this. This could be the opening act. Colorado Supreme Court ruling that Trump is disqualified from the presidential primary ballot. So wait, he can't even run in the primary? They're trying to say Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada are all feared to be trying the same kind of stuff. I mean, you want to talk shenanigans. The people no longer have a choice. The people want him to. So this is why DeSantis is still hanging in there. Why Nikki Haley is hanging out too. I'm really sickened by the hysteria of this moment. Really sickened by it. But you know what? It's interesting timing. The New York Times comes out with its poll today showing that Donald Trump is ahead. He's ahead in 5 of key swing states by a whole lot. Like we're talking 10 points in some places. He's ahead overall by 2 points, ahead of Joe Biden. And we've been just getting pummeled, have we not, in the last couple of weeks with all of these elite media types and folks on the left saying he cannot actually win the presidency because if he does, I don't need to tell you. Let's take it away here. This is thanks to our friends at Tom and the crew over at Grabian that put together this mashup. Wow. Watch.
What would a second Donald Trump term look like?
Well, he cannot be the next president because if he is...
You can't imagine the things that he's going to do. Mexico, Canada. We can't go to Canada because eventually Canada will become annexed to America.
And shoot visitors to the White House. Yeah. That means he can shoot the First Lady.
We're going to see violence, the likes of which we didn't even see on January 6th.
Make it illegal to run against him, to throw his opponents in jail, to shut down the media.
He will make himself into the Fuhrer, and he will make everybody raise their hand and salute him.
Using martial law against the American people.
Terminate the Constitution.
To rewrite the Constitution.
Create mass internment camps.
Throw everyone into Gitmo.
Might be sent to jail or their rights might be suppressed, especially minority groups in society.
You might have any number of things happen to you and your family.
Every one of us, our freedom, our liberty, none of us is safe.
He's going to have people around him executing against an enemy's list.
Assassinate.
Wow. I mean, so you see that the stakes are so high. They absolutely do not want Donald Trump to win. Now, one has to wonder, is there anything connected here to the documents that Donald Trump took and brought with him to Mar-a-Lago? I've been talking about this for a couple of days now. And the New York Times had a story recently saying that the information in those documents was quite sensitive and very, very classified because it detailed the inner workings of how Deep State tried to take him down back in 2016. With the whole wiretapping of Carter Page, you remember that, and the use of this phony fake dossier and all that stuff. And so while it has been released to the public, in fact, you can see some of this, the whole issues of, how Lisa, Paige, and Peter Strzok, and I may have their names backwards, but, the dynamic duo, infamous lovebirds that they were, how they were communicating back and forth to make sure that he couldn't move forward. That was one component. But most of the really sort of nitty-gritty, interesting stuff that would be quite alarming if it were somehow released or somehow exposed was buried within the document, and that was stuff that got whited out. So they released the classified document on the FBI's website, and much of it, unfortunately, was struck out. So Donald Trump had the original version. He had the original thing, and that is what he allegedly took with him to Mar-a-Lago. Probably because it's like, CYA, like they're going to come after me hard. Like, let me make sure I have a little ammunition. He made the point at the time, look, you know what? He was the president. He could declassify anything. And that was something to him that was worth declassifying. But there are people that really don't want that declassified for very important reasons. Now, I'm looking at when these primaries are being held. And part of the problem now becomes timing. So again, Colorado, breaking news, has ruled, the Supreme Court there 4-3, that Trump is disqualified from being on the presidential primary ballot. This is the state's high court. And so, they're each in charge of their own ballots and who can be on them. And they have the right to say, okay, this is not, and because they're citing actually that he was an insurrectionist, and they're using the 14th Amendment, Section 3, to say, you can't be on the ballot because, they put this thing after the Civil War, and they wanted to make sure that there was no conflict like that in terms of power. And so it's never been used. It's never been used until now because, they really hate him and they really don't want him on the ballot. So Colorado did this. He can't be on the primary ballot. So what does that mean? Keep in mind, the Supreme Court just told us, and the left doesn't like this, but they are going to hear the case about those quote-unquote insurrectionists that Jack Smith has put behind bars. There's nearly 300 of these people, plus Donald Trump. And they are going to look at whether or not the federal government overstepped its bounds on this particular sliver of the law that was put in during Sarbanes-Oxley, rather recently, right? Designed to go after white-collar criminals. And basically the law says that you cannot impede a congressional function, right? There was a congressional act that they were trying to move forward. And these quote-unquote insurrectionists, these protesters that showed up at January 6th, on January 6th, they were in the way of that. So the question becomes, was the president guilty of this as well? Now, I spoke, unfortunately, the audio went out, so you can't hear it, but I can tell you what Alan Dershowitz told me on record about this. When we spoke, he said that he suspected the court would have a little something for everyone there, but ultimately they would rule that it was not actually a case of insurrection. And so that would mean that Donald Trump could be president again. But how can he be president if he can't even get on the ballot in the state of Colorado? So there's certainly, there's certain filing dates that you have to look at, the filing deadline for the ballots themselves. And this is like music to Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis's ears, because this had to be, I kept saying, like, why are they still in this race? We're all like, why bother? Because somebody is in their ear saying, you know what? He's not going to be able to run. He's not going to be able to do it. We will make sure he's not able to do it. So the Colorado presidential primary actually happens, if this data is correct, I believe it is. This is the 2024 presidential primary dates and candidate filings. The primary date is actually in March. Wait, is this correct? We're going to double check this data because I do not want to give you any information that is incorrect. But I'm troubled by this because if he can't even get on the primary ballot, what does that mean? I mean, keep in mind, he hasn't even been charged with insurrection, right? Like they haven't even had the court case. That doesn't even happen until March of 20 24. Like that's March 4th, 2024 in D.C. Like Jack Smith hasn't even presented the case. So how is the Colorado State Court deciding this one? I guess because they're saying, okay, well, states have the right to do their own thing. You understand the constitutional crisis that this actually is setting us up for. A kind of civil war that is actually looking increasingly quite real if you're living in an environment where one state decides, we don't like that. We don't like Republicans. We don't like Republicans. We don't want a Republican on the ballot. Period. End of story. I mean, look at how they went after DeSantis. Okay, when DeSantis was way ahead, they were going after him tooth and nail. So don't kid yourself. I mean, sure. I mean, Trump doesn't necessarily, let's be honest. I mean, it's part of the reason for his success, but it's also part of the reason he's in all this trouble. He speaks overly freely with very passionate words that are not always completely sensitive to the moment. All right. Like we can get that out there, but people are like, hey, I'll take some mean tweets before I take a lousy economy and the threat of us being at war and our border being infiltrated. But the reality is they are making this decision. They are making this decision to keep him off the ballot. My question then becomes, if this is a technicality, are we really going to have enough people running out and handwriting him in? I don't think so. I mean, that really is not a proven way to do this. We do know that every single time they try and kick him when he's down, he gets stronger. He gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So every time they come out with all of these cases, what happens? He surges again in the polls. So he's going to go up even more. But the system is going to say, we don't care. We're still going to find a way to keep you out. That's not America. And again, let me remind you, we have a court system that's set up for a reason. The Supreme Court is the Supreme Court for a reason. But you see, we've heard most recently, I mean, there was the guy, I keep playing you this soundbite. I don't know if we have it. Let me ask the team if we have this guy, because this CNN guy that used to be at Daily Beast, I had never seen him before or heard of him before, but he, the Ivy League guy, I think there's like a Harvard and Yale thing in there. He has this idea that somehow if the Supreme Court rules that Trump can be on the ballot, then you know what? We're going to have a complete breakdown, because that's effectively the Supreme Court being okay with a coup. I mean, I'm like, this is like full-on Latin America. I've done a lot of reporting on Venezuela and other places down there. You heard me talking with Dershowitz about how I was down in Paraguay investigating terrorist financing in Paraguay, all the money that they were sending from the tri-border region to Hamas and Hezbollah. Well, let me tell you, I've seen my share of messed up places, okay? Messed up systems. And if Colorado can prevent the Republican nominee, like overwhelmingly the Republicans want, from being on the ballot, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we're not the America we once knew. And if the CNN guy who's terrified that somehow the Supreme Court might actually rule that, you know what, Jack Smith and company, you can't use this little known clause to actually go after him and prevent him from running for president because it doesn't actually apply, then what happens then? I mean, really and truly, I mean, is this the breaking point? Let's listen to the guy. I want to hear your reaction, guys. I mean, I'm here in the chat. I'm live, so let me know your thoughts. This is insane.
Me now, CNN senior political analyst John Avlon. John, I want to go back to the trial delays for Donald Trump, not the legal side, but his federal election trial might get delayed past March 4th. It might never get heard. If he wins, he would throw it out. Aside from the legal implications, what are the moral implications of that?
The moral implications, the constitutional implications are massive for our country. Because as you have pointed out, without accountability, an attempt to overturn an election, a slow motion coup, is just practice. it's a green light if there's no accountability for this. And the implications down the line are striking, right? I mean, for example, if the Supreme Court or a court should say that a president's not criminally liable for anything he did when in office, well, that's a green light for authoritarian action for people when they're president. They're officially and permanently above the law, not just simply because of an Office of Legal Counsel opinion.
I don't know what will happen, but it's possible, at least possible, that...
Wow. Okay, they're setting us up for something pretty big. Now, before we completely flip out and say, you know what, he's not going to be on the ballot at all, I do want to at least say this. I suspect that case that they were going to take, by the way, hasn't even been taken in D.C. Again, just to clarify, March 4th is the date. You've got primaries that are happening in March. So they can't wait at the Supreme Court until June to take this case up. They have got to take it in the here and now. They've got to take it. I suspect that this will be expedited because how can it not be? Now, I want to share with you the campaign statement that the Trump administration just came out with right now. Let's see if we can get this up on the screen. It's going to be a quick turnaround for our team there in the control room because this is, like we say here, folks, this is live, this is breaking, and we are on it. We are on it. So anyway, the Trump team just issued a statement right now, the campaign statement on the Colorado Supreme Court ruling in which they write, unsurprisingly, the all-Democrat appointed, did I not just tell you that? Colorado Supreme Court has ruled against President Trump. Ruled against President Trump supporting a Soros-funded left-wing group scheme. Interesting choice of words there, scheme. A left-wing, Soros-supported left-wing group scheme to intervene in an election on behalf of crooked Joe Biden. There we go with the nicknames. By removing President Trump's name from the ballot and eliminating the rights of Colorado voters to vote for the candidate of their choice. Yeah. Democrat Party leaders are in a state of paranoia. In a state of paranoia, you can see it. We got it right there on the screen so you can read along with me. Over the growing dominant lead President Trump has amassed in the polls, they have lost faith in the failed Biden presidency and are now doing everything they can to stop the American voters from throwing them out of office next November. The Colorado Supreme Court issued a completely flawed decision tonight, and we will swiftly file an appeal. There we go. To the U.S. Supreme Court and a concurrent request for a stay of this deeply undemocratic decision. We have full confidence that the U.S. Supreme Court will quickly rule in our favor and finally put an end to these un-American lawsuits. This is from the Trump campaign spokesperson, Stephen Cheung. So this is, from a legal perspective, pretty darn fascinating. From the perspective of an everyday American, pretty damn scary. That they can come forward in a court on its own before the case is even heard. Like, they have not actually heard Jack Smith's case. They're doing this out there on their onesies. They just don't like them, right? I played you the sound. They really don't like them. And so now the thought is that you're going to be looking at Wisconsin. You're going to be looking at Michigan. You're going to be looking at Pennsylvania. You're going to be looking at Nevada. A whole host of states that are going to say, oh, I think we'll do this too. So let's go back to that. I think we've got some information from the Anderson versus Griswold election law, the 14th Amendment, some of the political questions here. In the appeal from a district court proceeding under the Colorado Election Code, the Supreme Court considers whether former President Trump may appear on the Colorado Republican presidential primary ballot in 2024. A majority of the court holds that President Trump is disqualified. This is what they just came out with again. This is the ruling from the Supreme Court in Colorado. A majority of the court holds that President Trump is disqualified from holding the office of president under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution because he is disqualified. It would be a wrongful act under the election code for the Colorado Secretary of State to list him as a candidate on the presidential primary ballot. The court stays its ruling until January 4th, 2024, subject to any further appellate proceedings. And so this is where the appeals court is going to come in. This is why this is going all the way to the Supreme Court, ladies and gentlemen, and it's not going to take until June. They're going to have to expedite this one. They're going to have to move quickly because otherwise Americans are really going to be angry. But you know what? I'll tell you this. I will tell you this with certainty right now. They just scored Donald Trump a whole bunch of extra points in the polls. They got him some extra points because people don't like this. Even the independents, right? And they're all fighting for the independents. Even the independents are like, wait a second, you're taking away my right to decide who I want? How is that okay? It's not okay. It's never okay. Anyway, let's go out to some of our comments here to get some of your impressions on all of this. Never a dull moment, you know, and this is what you call a live show. Again, we are live right now on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Rumble as we get this news that has just come in regarding President Trump and Colorado's decision to not allow him, can you imagine that, to actually be running on the Colorado ticket. And I'm not kidding when I say I think that there's several states that are going to be following suit as well. So I just want to read what you guys are saying. And I think I'm earlier in the conversation because I see some stuff about Christmas shopping. No, I haven't gotten all my shopping done, Mike. I'm here with you guys every day, right? Trying to make sure that we are on it and we are delivering all of this news. I do have more Christmas shopping to do. By the way, if you guys do too, live free or die. That's my slogan. You can go to the trishregan.shop. I will actually put it here for you. Well, we'll do it later. You'll see it in the list of things, along with the book from Alan Dershowitz. But anyway, this is pretty outrageous. Yeah, you agree with me, right? It's nuts. Daniel, I agree. Totally outrageous. Ben, thank you. Love you guys too. I mean, look, somebody has to be standing up for, regardless what you think about Trump. I mean, this is the thing, right? Let me just say this. Regardless of anything, like even if you hate the guy, you should believe enough in the system. You should actually believe enough in the American voter and trust the American voter to actually make the right decision. If the Republican Party decides that this is their candidate, hey, they got plenty of other choices. You got Chris Christie, you got Nikki Haley, you got Ron DeSantis, you've got, the list goes on and on and on. I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy, you've got a whole bunch of people out there that are offering to be the alternative. And if the people have made their decision, like, who am I? Who are they to say, no, we are making a decision for the Republican voters of Colorado. We're not going to allow this guy on the ballot. So this is setting up a pretty nasty showdown that I suspect, again, I don't know. I will tell you that Alan Dershowitz, noted law professor associated with Harvard for more than 60 years, he told me that he suspects there might be a little something in there for everyone, but ultimately that they're probably going to rule that it's really not entirely applicable. So if that's the case and Donald Trump can still win, then guess what, guys? He might just actually win. He might just actually win because people are going to be like, so shocked by this, so stunned by this. He might win Colorado. I imagine there's a lot of people in the middle that are looking at this, and we've seen this with all of the polling thus far. Like every time they file another lawsuit, boom, presto, he goes up in the polls. So I don't think this strategy is going to be successful. Hey, I got a novel idea. Why not? Why not just actually find a good candidate and run the good candidate? Why do you have the very old candidate who's even old for his age, with the screwed up son that's done who knows what, right? Hopefully we'll get to the bottom of that one. Why are you putting him on the ballot? Why not actually go out and do your job, Democrats, and actually get a good candidate who could actually help this country? And you know what? I'm not even going to be political on this because JFK cut taxes. Thank you very much. You know I'm a red-blooded American capitalist. I want freedom in our ability to prosper economically. We don't have that right now. We've got taxes that are going to continue going up. We've got massive amounts of debt. Great story, actually, in the Wall Street Journal today. I'm not going to get to it today because we had all this breaking news, but we can talk about it tomorrow on how, lo and behold, the U.S., our corporate taxes are creeping higher and higher and higher all over again. And hey, we're beating France in that department. France actually has lower taxes than us. I mean, this is crazy. Donald Trump changed that, and it was for the better. It was for the better. And now here we are in a situation where, and I'm just communicating with my team here in live time as we speak. This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Truly, ladies and gentlemen, Colorado court just jumped the shark, to use a Happy Days expression. Anyway, Daryl, thank you. It's good to have all you guys here. David, thank you so much. I agree, David. I think it's going to be a win by the landslide. Anyway, great to have you guys here. We're going to get more on this as we move forward tomorrow. This is really quite something else. Colorado, the first in the history of this wonderful storied nation to actually put into place a clause that was created after the Civil War. They are using a clause in the 14th Amendment to prevent and disqualify the person that is out in front for the Republican Party from even appearing on the ballot. And one can anticipate other states following suit. This has got to get expedited ASAP to the Supreme Court so that we can learn once and for all whether or not the Supreme Court, which is the law of the land, is actually going to hold the president responsible for what transpired on January 6th, whether or not he's guilty of quote unquote insurrection, as so many on the left want you to believe. They will make the final decision on that, and that will decide whether or not he can be on the ballots. It's really going to heat up big time. I'll see you tomorrow.